Hey everyone, so today on the third video, or episode 3 if you want to call it that, we're going to be learning how to do long division, and it's pretty easy. We're definitely going to be pros by the end of the video. So, um, before we actually get into the process, I want to go over some vocab. Here's the vocab. So the first word is dividend, which is the number being divided. Then we have divisor, which is the number used to divide. The quotient, the result of division, so the answer. And remainder, which is the leftovers after division. So I have three little mini examples off to the right that are color coded to correspond with the words that they represent. So in each case, 48 is the dividend because it's the number being divided, right? We read all of these statements as 48 divided by 2. Or in the case of number 2, we would say 48 over 2, but remember fractions are also a different representation of division, right? So every time you see a fraction, it's also a statement of division. So the 2 is purple, so that's the divisor, and the 24 is that blue, so it's the quotient. And I actually don't have anything in green because I wanted to walk through a mini example of the remainder in real time. So let's do that. Let's say we'd had um, 5 squares. One, two, three, 4, 5, right? And we wanted to divide those squares into groups of 2. So like 5 divided by 2, okay? You can see clearly here that um, 2 groups of 2 are within this 5, right? But here is actually a leftover, right? There's one left over. If we had another square, we would have 3 groups of 2. If we had 6 squares, the statement would now be 6 divided by 2, which is 3, right? But we have only 5 squares. So we say that 5 divided by 2, if we're speaking in terms of remainders, we'd say 5 divided by 2 is 2 with a remainder of 1, like that. That's how we'd say it, R1. That's kind of a tiny, ugly R, but whatever. Okay, so let's go over our first example. I'm going to rewrite that. Example 1. And we have 58 divided by 2. And so keep in mind that this could have also been asked like that, like 58 over 2. Let me rewrite that also. Right, and those mean the same thing. But so when we do long division, we actually use that sideways L sort of bracket, the long division bracket. And so this is what we do. So 58 is the dividend, so it goes inside the bracket, and 2 is the divisor, so it goes here. And so division is basically asking how many times does the divisor go into the dividend, right? And so we know here we're going to get a pretty number because it's asking 58 divided by 2. And 58 is an even number, okay? 8 is even, so 58 is even. And we're asking how many times can an even number be divided by 2? And we know that it must be a good number that we get out because that's the definition of evenness, right? It can be divided by 2. But to actually approach this, we ask ourselves, how many times does 2 go into 5, right? Just the 5, okay? Or whatever the first digit is. So how many times does 2 go into 5? Well, it goes in twice, right? And then we multiply that number on the top now by our divisor, right? Multiply, which is 4, right? And then we write it underneath the 5. And now we subtract. 5 minus 4 is 1. And then we bring down the next digit and drop it down here. Then we ask ourselves how many times the divisor goes into this difference, right? So now in the context of this problem, how many times does 2 go into 18? And we just know that that's 9 times, right? So we put the 9 up here, and then we do 9 times 2, right? Which is 18, and then we subtract that, and we have 0. So when we have a difference of 0, that means our division happened cleanly and evenly and there's nothing left over. And so we say that 58 divided by 2 equals 29. And we can check that, right? So if 58 divided by 2 equals 29, then 29 times 2 must equal 58. So we can try that. So we have 29 times 2. 2 times 9 is 18. Carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. 58. So it checks out. It works. So now you're going to try one. So for example 2, it's still long division, but we're going to talk about a different kind of divisor. So we just had a single digit divisor. Now we're going to have a divisor that's 2 digits. But the process is the same for any amount of digits in the dividend or divisor. You're going to do the same thing. So let's set up our long division again. So 168, the dividend goes inside the bracket. I'm going to resize the bracket. 168 goes inside the bracket, the dividend, and the divisor goes on the outside. So we ask ourselves, how many times does 12 go into 1? Right? We always check the first digit. In this case, 12 doesn't go into 1, right? 12 is bigger than 1. So we can just put a 0. You could leave it blank or put a 0. Then we check the first 2 digits if it doesn't go in, if the divisor doesn't go into only the first digit. So instead of how many times does 12 go into 1, we ask how many times does 12 go into 16, okay? And that's one time, right? If we try to put in another 12, we go all the way up to 24, and that's not what we're trying to do. So 12 goes into 16 once. And remember, we take that and multiply it by 12. So 1 times 12 is 12. And then we subtract. 16 minus 12 is 4. Bring down the 8. And now we ask ourselves, how many times does 12 go into 48? Right? And we all know that's just 4 times. 12 times 4 is 48. Same thing again. We multiply that 4 times the 12. And then that's 48. Bring it down here. Subtract again. And we get 0, which means 168 was divided by 12 evenly. And so we can say that 168 divided by 12 equals 14. And check it again, right, just to be 100% sure. If 168 divided by 12 equals 14, then 14 times 12 must equal 168, right? So we do 14 times 12. 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. Placeholder 0. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. Add 8, 6, 1. Cool. And it checks out again. So here's another example you're going to try on your own, and then that'll be it.